The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
This article was sent to me, I think it was from Sean, and now I'm just having my mind just went blank. But I think Sean or someone else sent me this article. We are now seeing the first autonomous farming tractors. And I don't think I have to go into too much depth to explain to you the implications that this could continue to have. And you know, and I know, we've been talking about for so long that somewhere between 30 and 50% of current jobs done by humans potentially could be automated by machines and robots. If we think about the farming world and you think about an autonomous tractor, already so much of farming has been automated, or at least many people have been replaced by the huge farming machines that are out there. This is going to continue to destroy jobs. And I have to tell you, I don't think there's any holding this back. I just don't see how you will justify taking more time and requiring more people to farm food when you can have completely unmanned farming tractors. I just don't think it's going to happen.
I don't either, but I think that's going to still take a long, long time because they need to make sure that everything is in place in terms of security and safety.
Security and safety in terms of the tractor running someone over or going outside of where it's supposed to be or whatever?
Right. And I guess security kind of would be more on the vein of autonomous cars and kind of having all of your information connected to that car, and then the ease and accessibility to kind of hack into that information. So I feel like that's a little bit separate, but somehow when I think of an autonomous vehicle, that strain of security starts to populate my brain.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have those types of reactions, and I know not everybody agrees with me on this, but I'm convinced that stuff's going to get figured out.
This is just the story of the industrial age. When the horse went away, it didn't go away, but when they moved to cars and Ford started making plants to create vehicles,
yep,
there is outrage against all this, and it's just going to be another hurdle we get over and come up with ways to deal with. And I heard another story about this recently about how America is going to have to pivot into a service industry based economy. And that's largely what we're doing with these kind of ride sharing services. Yeah. There's like TaskRabbit.
Except soon you won't need the people. I mean, at least as far as Uber goes, right? Uber already in Pittsburgh has launched autonomous self-driving Ubers, although for now you still have to have a driver sort of sitting there. I think the key difference, and the example about the car production line is a really good one, because when we went from horses as the primary means of transportation to cars, there were people who said, we've got to prevent cars from becoming commonplace because all of the horse buggy drivers are going to lose their jobs. That seems crazy now that we would have not moved forward with cars because of that reason. But the car industry created way more jobs than were ever lost by the horse buggy drivers. It's very different now, right? Where we actually have technology net destroying more jobs. So autonomous farming tractors are not going to destroy some jobs, but create a ton of new ones. We've actually gotten to the point where we're seeing a net destruction of jobs. That's why I understand this is very, very scary.
Yeah, and you're gonna need people to service these. They're gonna break. You're gonna have people surveilling them, making sure they're working correctly. It's gonna take a lot of technology and people to get them up to speed to actually work properly.
But once they are, a lot of those jobs are going away.
Yeah, it's true. But what I was talking about though is I think you'll see a pivot towards more services, a service industry where people will come. While there is a robot that will clean your house, we did a story about this. It's going to create a poopocalypse in your house, right, where it's going to run over some dog poop and get it everywhere.
The Roomba, yeah.
Yeah, you're still going to want people to come to clean your house. Maybe people are going to have cooks. Maybe we're going to have more of a kind of a patronage society, blah, that there was, say, in Roman times.
The problem with that, though, Rachel, is that a lot of the jobs that we say, hey, these would be sort of harder, the detail to which a person can clean your house versus a Roomba going around the floor is going to make it so that you're much more likely to continue hiring a person. That's true. But when you talk about cooks and cleaning houses, not exactly the highest paid jobs, right? And I think that's part of the issue, which is will the move towards that, under correct assessment you're making, service industry, be high quality jobs, or will they be relatively low quality jobs? And that's a pretty real concern.
I think on a macro scale and kind of large production terms of jobs, I think automation, yes, it's already taking over. It has taken over, and that's definitely going to be expanding. But I think in terms of more of a micro level, such as someone cleaning your house, there's still going to be a demand for those services from a human being, in my opinion.
To the extent that the people have the money to pay for someone to clean their house, which is where
Right.
sometimes in these discussions we get to, we really need a basic income, which is the only way that those service industry professionals are going to be able to earn money is if there continue to be enough people who can afford them. If all of these jobs go away, somewhere needs to come the money to then pay the person to clean your house or pay the cook or whatever it is that we're talking about. And that's why in my head, I can't separate increased automation from the need for just a basic income that is not like unemployment. It is not food stamps or welfare. It's just you're entitled to this. And this is money that you now have to spend in the economy and to put into other businesses, et cetera. I really don't see how we will have a viable economy that without even bigger income inequality, unless we start seeing basic income rise in conjunction with this type of automation technology. And I know many people say, David, that sounds socialist. I mean, that's such at this point a ridiculous critique. It's like, let's talk about the real world. Don't just apply a tag to something and write it off because of that.
So a good example from the real world here in Boston, something that's going on. They actually have and you said the cook example, they actually have a shortage of cooks in the restaurant industry because it exploded here with this, people say the gentrification of society.
The foodie scene.
The foodie scene,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
No,
And
restaurants have been getting much better in Boston since I've been here. That's for sure.
And there's a huge demand for cooks of skill.
Yeah.
And it's only continue. But, a good topic you bring up there is this whole thing, the minimum wage versus the living wage. And I would be called a communist and a socialist myself because there's a huge disconnect there. Even bringing the minimum wage to $15 an hour is nowhere near enough where it needs to be. I think the statistic I heard was to be living comfortably, someone actually needs to be making like $40,000 to $50,000 a year to actually afford what you need to live and survive.
Depends where you live. I mean, in some parts of the country, you can get a house for $20,000 and it's very, very, very cheap. But there's definitely a scale there. The $15 an hour minimum wage argument, yeah, I mean, we're talking about inflation adjusted. The minimum wage already should be much higher than where it is now, just to be equal to the 1968 minimum wage. So a lot of issues wrapped up into this. The driverless tractor, it looks very cool, but it represents a lot of questions about the future of American and really world culture and society. Okay, let me tell a story that I think there's going to be new information in this story, I think definitely to Jason and probably to Rachel as well. So here's the backstory. Years ago, I was in Washington, D.C., and I went to dinner with my friend Jay Tomlinson, who hosts the Best of the Left podcast. And we went to a place I believe called Asian Spice in downtown Washington, D.C. I don't remember exactly what neighborhood, not hugely familiar with the city offhand. And we go in there, and it wasn't a hugely busy night, but there were some people in there. And the waitress brings us over to sort of a corner table in a quieter area of the restaurant. I think absolutely nothing of it, no big deal. And after giving us our menus, she leaves. And when she comes back into the room, before coming over to us to take our order, she dims the lights in the room. And we both sort of look over. We're basically two friends talking business and talking about our shows and whatever. We both look over and she looks at us and she says, "More romantic." So clearly she thought we were on a date, which is totally cool. I mean, I'm not offended by that, but it was just sort of interesting. I'm there with Jay. I don't know if it was something about me. I don't know if it was something about Jay or about our interaction or whatever, but she felt that it was a romantic date and that she was going to turn the lights down for us. Okay. About a year after that, I got an email from a viewer who lived here in Boston. At the time, we were either in Western Mass or New York City. Don't remember exactly where. And the viewer says, "David, I love your show. I think what you're doing is absolutely great. It's so good for the progressive community. And my husband and I are, we're gay, and we're here in Boston. And for us, we realize that what we have here is not what many LGBT people have in other parts of the country. And it's great that you're fighting for those rights. And I think it's so great that you do the show with your significant other, Lewis. And my husband and I would love to have you out for dinner out in Boston on us. Just come out and visit." And it crossed my mind to say, that would be great. And not to tell Lewis that this was sort of a double date, right? and just to show up and to see what happens and see how is it revealed to Lewis that this guy and his husband think that we're a couple. But I responded and I said, I'm absolutely flattered. You know, as it happens, not only are Lewis and I not together, we both date women, only women. And so it's totally cool and everything's great and peace and love and the whole thing. But we're actually not a couple. We're both heterosexual. Great. Last night, a friend of mine texted me. I was getting out of a meeting at about 6:30. A friend of mine who was flying out of Logan Airport last night says, David, I have like 3 hours before I have to be at my flight. My flight's been delayed by an hour or so. Anyway, he ended up having 3 hours to kill. And he said, are you around? Are you downtown or whatever? We can meet for a beer. I said, yeah, let's get together. That sounds good. We picked a spot to go and we met there. And we walk in there. Now, my friend is from Italy and he is heterosexual. By these sort of very narrow American standards, they might see, you know, a sort of well-dressed and fit Italian 30-year-old and say, oh, that fits a stereotype of what I think of as an either gay guy or metrosexual guy or whatever. And that will become relevant to the story a little bit later. But he's a heterosexual guy. I'm a heterosexual guy. We walk in to the place where we were getting a beer and we're just sort of looking around. And as my eyes go over the bar seats, two people I realize have they're craning their necks and looking directly at me and smiling. And I, in my head, said, I think they probably recognize me. I think that's what's going on here. And I just sort of waved. We eventually found our seat and we went and we sat down. It was quite busy. And we ended up once again at a 2-person table in the sort of more dimly lit area of the bar restaurant. And we made a beer order. And we're chatting, and out of the corner of my eye, I see one of the two guys that was smiling at me at the bar turn. He gets up, and I'm just talking to my friend, and I see that he's coming in out of the corner of my eye, and I say, okay, this guy did recognize me, and he's going to say hi. Great, no big deal. He says, hey, excuse me. I just wanted to say hello. Big fan of the David Pakman Show. I work right by here. Do you come here often? Type of thing. I was like, oh, I've been here once before. I'm here with, whatever. And I said, oh, this is my friend Lorenzo. And my friend, remember, we're talking about this very well-dressed, fit Italian guy who, to the stereotypes that exist in the minds of many Americans, he would be identified as maybe a gay guy. And this is crazy, right? This is completely crazy, but I'm aware of this. And it was made abundantly clear that this guy who said hi thought that my Italian friend and I, sitting in the dimly lit corner of this bar, were once again on a date. It does not bother me at all, but it is just so funny to me that there's this thing on the show where half the insults are insults based on my perceived homosexuality. And then I've had these 2 incidents already where there's this sort of assumption that I am on a date with another guy or would be going to one or I'm in a relationship with one or whatever. And then I for a second, stepped out of my own mind and said, this is probably this individual's perception of what's going on right now. And obviously I didn't comment on it. This was someone I met for 30 seconds at this bar. But yet again, I just find myself in one of those situations. And I really think it's just coincidence. I don't know that I'm doing anything in particular.
Yeah, I can't remember. Who is the writer who said there are no coincidences?
I don't know.
I would like to know.
But how would that apply to this?
Because it wouldn't be a coincidence.
Oh, okay.
I think it's like Rachel was saying on one of the recent shows we were on, just take it as a compliment. You're obviously just too attractive. Everyone wants you or wants you to be with who they want you to be with, and it's a good thing.
I just don't know why it makes a difference in the context of the audience. Is it because of LGBT advocacy, where it would make more sense that I'm an advocate of LGBT rights if I identify as LGBT myself? I mean, clearly it's stemming from something, and it at least you would imagine partially is from some of the issues we talk about on the show.
Right. Or I don't know if it's just some kind of warped perception of something aesthetically because you're well dressed. I don't really understand the fixation at all. I don't think that it's a negative thing, but I don't really understand why people are so fixated on it.
Part of it could be because we've also heard from a lot of people that they think Jason is gay. I mean, on his first day, we already had a handful of comments saying, well, you've replaced Lewis with a gay guy.
Right.
What? I just don't understand.
And I have a sexy name, apparently.
And that Jason, and they thought it was spelled Jasan, they found to be, they said it was a gay name.
Oh,
which,
yeah.
I mean, I don't get it. And anyway,
Anyways.
it might be way simpler than any of us is making it out to be. It might be that there is still this idea that by saying someone is gay, you're in some way insulting them, and people just want to insult us and are picking on what to them. Because to me, I'm so past the idea that you even say that's gay or you're a fag as an insult that it makes not very much sense to me. But in some worlds, maybe it's a way to actually try to hurt someone by saying, hey, you look like a gay guy.
Hey,
Yeah.
not in some worlds. That is kind of the world we live in. We are moving to this idiocracy state of America and the world where homophobia is rampant.
Although I hope that I know that it has improved over the last 5 years, given some of the legislation. It's become much more, many people still have incredibly homophobic, deeply held beliefs, but it's at least become, in many parts of the country, way less acceptable to be openly homophobic. And that's I think that's a start. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, if you're thinking about why someone does something and what their motivation is and what their reasoning, I think your kind of explanation of it being an insult actually does make sense, because I don't think anyone who is non-homophobic would say that it's not an insult. So that, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.